Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. I hope you're enjoying your weekend, and I hope you're going to enjoy this video preview of the brand new Tier 6 premium French battleship about to be released in World of Warships, the Dunkerque. And there she is in all her glory, and I have to say this is one seriously good looking ship. Construction began on the Dunkerque in 1932, she was complete and launched in 1935, and she was commissioned into the French Navy in 1937. The Dunkerque was one of two Dunkerque-class battleships, her sister ship being the Strasbourg, and these ships were designed as a direct response to the threat posed by the German Deutschland class of heavy cruisers, consisting of three ships, the Deutschland, the Admiral Graf Spee, and the Admiral Scheer. As such, the Dunkerque-class battleships were only given enough armour to protect them from the 11-inch or 283mm guns of these German heavy cruisers. Dunkerque had a pretty short and a pretty unremarkable service history. For her first 2 years of service with the French Navy, France was at peace, and so her duties consisted of little more than sailing around foreign outposts showing the French flag. On the outbreak of war with Germany in 1939, the Dunkerque was part of the squadron, including HMS Hood, attempting to track down and sink the two German battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau after their sinking of the British armed merchant cruiser the Rawalpindi. Then, in response to the Italian threat in the Mediterranean, the Dunkerque was posted to Mers el-Kabir in Algeria and spent a lot of time sailing out into the Mediterranean looking for Italian warships which were never there in the first place. It was while at port in Mers el-Kabir, however, where the Dunkerque would receive its first and only taste of actual combat, and unfortunately that would be at the hands of the British Royal Navy. Following the capitulation of France in 1940, an armistice was signed with Germany, which on paper at least guaranteed sovereignty to that part of France which was not under direct German military control. Despite assurances from the French naval commander Admiral Darlan that he would never allow his ships to be seized by the Germans, Winston Churchill remained unconvinced, and so he instructed Admiral Somerville to lead a force to Mers el-Kabir and deliver an ultimatum to the French ships anchored there. The British gave the French four choices: sail with the British and fight the Germans. Option 2, turn the ships over to the Royal Navy. Any ships which were lost or damaged during the course of the war with Germany, the French government would be paid compensation for, and any ships that survived the war undamaged would be returned to the French at the war's conclusion. Option 3, sail the French fleet to a French port in the West Indies, such as Martinique, and have the ships demilitarized, or entrust the ships to a neutral nation, such as the United States of America, until the conclusion of the war. The fourth and final option was that if the French refused options 1, 2 and 3, in order to ensure that the ships would not fall into German hands, Admiral Somerville was instructed to sink them within 6 hours of the ultimatum being delivered. The French commander quite rightfully refused the ultimatum, as this would have violated the terms of the armistice that his government had signed with Germany. And so once the 6 hours expired, Admiral Somerville ordered his guns to be turned on the French fleet at anchor. Dunkerque was tied up alongside with her stern facing out to sea, so she wasn't able to fire any of her main battery guns. She was engaged by HMS Hood and hit with 4 15-inch shells. In order to save the ship after the damage inflicted by HMS Hood, during the initial attack the captain of the Dunkerque beached the ship just along the coastline outside of the port of Mers el-Kabir proper. In the follow-up attack, Admiral Somerville, not wishing to cause collateral damage to a small village located right next to the ship, ordered that the Dunkerque be attacked by torpedo bombers. The Dunkerque was hit by one torpedo that tore a hole in 2 compartments. A second torpedo didn't hit the Dunkerque, but it did hit a patrol ship which was tied up alongside her. This patrol ship carried a full load of depth charges. The resulting explosion put such a big hole in the side of the ship that she immediately sank. However, she sank in very shallow water, and thanks to the quick thinking of the captain, who had ordered that the 330mm magazines be flooded as soon as he saw the torpedo bombers coming, meant that the ship was not a complete loss and could be salvaged. Total French losses during the raid mounted to almost 1,300 sailors, 5 ships damaged, 1 sunk, with 210 of the casualties coming from the Dunkerque. The ship was refloated in September 1940, but spent the entirety of 1941 dry docked in Mers el-Kabir undergoing repairs. Matters weren't helped when a major fire broke out in the dry dock, causing further extensive damage to the ship and delaying the repairs. And then in early 1942, yet another fire broke out in the dry dock, causing even more damage. Eventually, on the 20th of February 1942, she finally arrived under heavy escort in Toulon, where she once again entered dry dock for further comprehensive repairs. And here's where things start to get a little bit confusing. In late 1942, the Allies launched Operation Torch, which were landings in North Africa. Now, part of North Africa was Algeria, which was a Vichy French territory, and so the Vichy French actually opposed the landings and fought against the Allies, inflicting a not insignificant number of casualties on the Americans. Nevertheless, Operation Torch was a success, and that upset the Germans. It upset them a lot. In fact, it upset them so much that they decided to retaliate, and they retaliated by occupying the rest of France, which doesn't really seem fair given the circumstances, and goes without saying was a slight breach of the terms of the armistice. Naturally, the first thing the Germans tried to do was seize control of the French warships in Toulon, and true to their word, the French scuttled the ships rather than let the Germans get their hands on them. Demolition charges were set on the Dunkerque, and she burned. So, history lesson out of the way, let's take a look at the numbers. With 52,600 health, the Dunkerque has the second lowest hit point pool of any of the Tier 6 battleships, including the premiums. It has less health than the Arizona, the Warspite, the Fuso, and the New Mexico. In fact, the only Tier 6 battleship that it beats on raw hit points is the upcoming, but not yet available, German Bayern, also at Tier 6. But the Bayern, and all of the other Tier 6 battleships, has something that the Dunkerque doesn't. Good all-round armour. The Dunkerque's armour is weak. Where they get off calling this thing a battleship, I have no idea. But then again, there are no battle cruiser lines in World of Warships, and that's really where this thing belongs. The armour, at best, is 225mm thick. Now, that is at least around the citadel and the front of the gun turrets, but the fore and aft ends are pitifully weak with only 25mm of armour. What that means in practice is that anything with a 15-inch gun or bigger is going to lol pen your citadel right through the front of the ship, and if you're trying to run away from them, right through the back of the ship. So that is a bit of an issue. Let me just put this into perspective for you. I'm not going to compare it to the other battleships. I'm going to compare it to a Tier 6 cruiser. If I can find one. There we go, the Cleveland. Cleveland, Tier 6 cruiser. Not a terribly well armoured ship, and yet the Cleveland Citadel has 127mm of armour. Now that is enough, when the Cleveland's angled, to get a lot of bounces from the 11-inch guns of something like the Scharnhorst. Which is kind of interesting, because that amount of armour on the Dunkerque, that's exactly what it was designed to do, and no more. That 225mm of belt armour was designed to protect the ship from the 11-inch guns of the German cruisers of the Deutschland class. As mentioned earlier, the Deutschland, the Graf Spee, and the Admiral Scheer. It was not designed to protect the ship against, well, things like that. Unfortunately, things like that, and this, and, well, since this is a Tier 6 battleship, things like the Tirpitz. That's exactly, if I can find it, what the Dunkerque is going to have to fight. And that's going to be a bit of a problem, because it just doesn't have the armour for it. We're not quite done with the poor armour yet, however. It also has pretty bad, although not disastrous, 27% torpedo protection, damage reduction. Okay, I've seen worse than that. Let's go back to Tier 6, for example, and have a look at the Bayern, which only gets 19%. The Warspite, 22%. The Arizona, 39%. Yeah, the Arizona's a bit OP in that regard. But the 27% of the Dunkerque, while not being especially bad, is definitely not good. But it's not just the fact that it has 27% torpedo damage reduction. Did you notice something when I was flicking through the various different battleships there at Tier 6? Let me scroll out as much as I can. and you have to scroll out as much as you can in order to be able to capture the entire side of the ship on screen when it's in the port. And just have a look at the Warspite. Yeah, see the size difference? The Arizona. And the Dunkerque, yeah. Look at the size of this ship. And the Bayern, yeah. The Dunkerque's huge. It's massive. And it also sits very, very high in the water. There's a huge expanse of ship side there, with only 225mm of armour available for people to shoot at. Now, bear with me here because we're talking about torpedo protection damage reduction. If we have a look at the manoeuvrability, it has a 730 metre turning circle radius. Bayern, 630. Arizona, 640. Warspite, 550. Yeah, you're beginning to get the picture here now, aren't you? This thing is torpedo bait. It's huge. The ship's got its own postcode. It doesn't turn very quickly, although it does start to turn quickly because it only has an 11.2 second rudder shift time. But it's very difficult to avoid torpedoes in this thing, especially air-launched torpedoes, because the anti-aircraft defence sucks. It's got an AA rating of 37. The AA guns consist of, well, it's got 8 of these quad-barreled 13.2mm machine guns. They only have a 1.2 kilometre range, although they are high damage per second. These 37mm guns, they only have a 3 kilometre range, very low damage per second. It's got 2 of these double-barreled 130mm guns with, again, low damage per second, only 17, but they do have a firing range of 5.2 kilometres, but it's only got 2 of those turrets. And these 130mm quad-barreled with 37 damage per second and a 5.2 kilometre firing range. The AA on this ship is pretty bad. Anybody in an aircraft carrier, even an aircraft carrier a tier lower than you, the tier 5 carriers, if they want to hit this thing with bombs and torpedoes, it is going to happen. If you sail around unescorted in this thing, you're going to get hit, and it's going to hurt a lot. There is a spot of good news, however. This is the fastest tier 6 battleship in the game. It has a top speed of 29.5 knots. Substantially faster than the Bayern, which can only do 25 knots, although the Bayern isn't the slowest of the tier 6 battleships. No, that would be the Arizona, wouldn't it, with its top speed of 21 knots. Closely followed by the Warspite, 23.5 knots. Actually, I'm not entirely sure about that. Let's have a quick look at the Fuso. I know the Fuso is no speed demon, but I can't remember how fast it goes. With the top hull upgrade, it gets a speed of 21.6 knots. And with the propulsion upgrade, 24.5 knots. So faster than the Warspite, way faster than the Arizona, not as fast as the Bayern, and definitely not as fast as the Dunkerque. The Dunkerque is at least a quick ship. That's a feature of hydrodynamics. If you want to make something that's fast in a straight line in the water, you make it long and you make it thin. Unfortunately, it doesn't turn very well. That's the trade-off. 730 metre turning circle radius, unlike, for example, the Warspite, 550, the Arizona, 640, yada yada yada. But you are, with that speed, at least able to keep up with the air defence cruisers, something that you can't say of any of the other tier 6 battleships, who get abandoned by all the cruisers on their team and left to their own devices, and get some very rough treatment at the hands of the enemy aircraft carrier captains because the cruisers have all buggered off and abandoned the battleships. Well, in the Dunkerque you can at least keep up with the cruisers, so there is that. When we look at the ship's concealment rating, there's more bad news. This ship, because it's so big, will be spotted on the surface from a range of 16.4 kilometres and from the air at a range of 12 kilometres. Now, there are certain maps in the game where being spotted from a range of 16.4 kilometres means that anybody in any of the capture points can already see you. If you're still in your spawn location. This is a big ship. Expect to be spotted a lot in this thing. Now we come to the guns. And the guns are interesting. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're interesting. First of all, it has a fair amount of them. It has 8. And what I do really like about the guns on the Dunkerque is that they're all at the front of the ship. There we go, 4 guns per turret. This ship has no main battery guns at the rear. It has the secondaries. We'll come on to those in a moment. So, the good thing about having all of those guns firing to the front of the ship means that you can and should keep the front of this ship pointed towards the enemy, and never under any circumstances, if you can possibly prevent it, allow them to take shots at your pitifully weak side armour and lousy torpedo protection. And you can do that in the Dunkerque. Well, up to a certain point. Once you start losing more ships than the enemy, it starts to become increasingly easy for the enemy to get around your flanks and hammer the side of this ship. And that's bad news, because lousy side armour. But you can at least get all of these guns firing at them. Unfortunately, with all of the ship's guns in 2 turrets, you are kind of putting all of your eggs into one basket there. And while the turret fronts are reasonably well armoured, with 225mm of frontal turret armour, the rest of the turrets, not so much. And if you get one of these turrets knocked out, you've just lost half of your firepower. Also, because they packed so many guns into each turret, this actually affected the accuracy of the guns, because as soon as you fired one gun, it threw off the aim of all the other guns in the same turret, particularly the gun right next to it. So for example, if you were to fire this one, it would affect the aim of that one, and so on and so on. That's actually historically accurate. The Dunkerque was known for not being particularly accurate at shooting, and that's reflected in the stats of the gun, with the 227 metre dispersion at maximum range of 18.2 kilometres, which is pretty good. Unfortunately, because they're only 330mm guns, you would expect them to have a relatively fast reload, and they really don't. It takes 28 seconds to reload the guns on the Dunkerque. Now these are 330mm guns. The Warspite has 381mm guns, and it only takes 2 seconds more to reload them. What the Dunkerque does have, that the Warspite doesn't, is pretty fast rotating turrets. It's only got a 36-second 180-degree turn time. With the Warspite it takes like a minute to turn the guns around. So that's good. But this is a ship that has terrible armour, and your only real hope for survival in this thing is keeping the front of the ship pointing towards the enemy. So, well, yeah. Okay, the guns can turn relatively quickly. Under ideal circumstances, you'd never be turning the guns in the first place, because they're always going to be pointed straight forward, because that's where you want your enemies. Of course, you never play under ideal circumstances, so, well, you know, the turret rotation speed is at least there if you need it. Now, the secondaries on this ship are absolutely terrible, and it's not just the number and type of secondaries, it's because of where they're placed. It has 2 double-barreled 130mm guns, 1 turret on each side. These 2 turrets can at least fire forward. It has 3, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here, of these quadruple-barreled 130mm guns, and that's it. Now they do at least all have a range of 5.3 kilometers. Unfortunately, in practice, that's more or less useless. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. Now, this battle is not going particularly well. I haven't actually been able to do much damage at all so far, but this Fuso is showing me the broad flat side of the ship. I've pretty much got my bows pointing more or less straight towards him, although I'm more concerned about the destroyer hiding in that smoke screen up ahead. Shots out at the Fuso, despite the fact that he's given me the best possible target at a range of under 12 kilometers. 8 shots fired, 1 hit. Now we need to cap something fast, and I'm attempting to cap A, but I can't head directly there because there's a Fuso and I can't give him the side of the ship to shoot at, and there's a destroyer directly ahead of me in a smoke screen and I can't give him the side of the ship to shoot at. We're now close enough to see the destroyer, and at this point you'd expect my secondaries to be tearing him up, but they're all at the back of the ship, so they can't fire at him. So I'm actually going for a die-hard mel here, and I was going to ram the destroyer. Unfortunately, the spoilsports on my team ruined my fun by killing him. The destroyer had a perfect opportunity to torpedo me there, but he didn't take it. Now I still can't head for A, because that's going to show the side of the ship to the Fuso. So I have to kill the Fuso first. Thankfully, the Fuso isn't exactly making things difficult for me. But even here, at a range of 5.9 kilometers when I fired the guns and scored that citadel, half of the shots that I fired completely missed the Fuso, and he's presenting the best possible target at all but point-blank range. Now I'm inside secondary battery range. Can you hear them firing? No, because they're not firing. They're all at the back of the ship. At a range of 3.9 kilometers, only one of the 8 shots that I fired actually went into the side of the ship where I aimed it. I got a bounce, and I got a bunch of over-penetrations. There you go. One secondary battery hit from one of the double-barreled 130mm guns. When you get into close-range battleship brawls like this, your secondaries are blazing away on any ship other than the Dunkerque. And those secondaries can seriously help you out, because while they might not do a huge amount of damage by themselves, they're going to set fires. And that never happens on the Dunkerque, unless you're dumb enough to turn a ship sideways on with 225mm of belt armour against something armed with 12 14-inch guns. You can't do that, you'll die. And so I had to keep the front of the ship pointed towards the battleship that I was engaging at point-blank range, and my secondaries were completely useless. So how do you make the most of the Dunkerque? Well, you get your prayer mat out and you hope for a battle like this. Tier 6 maximum, no aircraft carriers. And you hope that the enemy team don't have any battleships with 15-inch guns, like Warspites for example, because they can penetrate you from the front with your terrible 25mm of bow armour. So how do you make the Dunkerque work? Because it doesn't have a lot of strengths. Its speed and forward firepower are pretty much it. And it's got a lot of weaknesses. Bad armour, terrible AA, practically non-existent secondaries. And, well, it might have a lot of forward firepower, but that forward firepower isn't particularly accurate. Well, there are two main ways of getting the most out of this ship. There's the boring and safe way, and there's the fun and dangerous way. And the fun, dangerous way is to forget that this is a battleship and instead play it like a battle cruiser. Go where the cruisers go and fight what the cruisers fight. You're almost fast enough to keep up with them, and that's good, because you don't really want to be the first thing that a whole bunch of enemy cruisers see, because this ship burns very, very nicely. Rather, you should be there to back up and support your cruisers. And this has the added benefit that when you come under the inevitable air attack, you've got a whole bunch of friendly cruisers around you ready to help you defend. The other way of making the Dunkerque work is the boring but safe way. And that basically means you become your traditional, stereotypical, back-of-the-map battleship camper. Now, this strategy is not without its risks, particularly if there is an aircraft carrier in play, because you're basically isolating yourself from the rest of your team by staying behind them and using the range of these 330mm guns, which means that if you do come under air attack, there's nobody nearby to help you out, your anti-aircraft is not going to be up to the task, you're the size of a city block, and you are going to take hits. On the other hand, if there are no carriers in play, and you're in a tier 6 maximum battle, and nobody's firing back at you with a 15-inch gun, you can actually get good results doing this. It's not particularly interesting, but the results speak for themselves. Trying to get some shots at this cruiser here. He's slow, although he's starting to speed up a little. Shots out, and then he disappears, but I managed to get the shots away before he disappeared from view. 8 shots, 2 hits. One was an over-penetration, but at least one of them went where I aimed it, and I got a citadel, so I'll take that. You'll notice at this point, I'm actually going backwards. That's right. The enemy team have had time to move around a little bit, and they've all spread themselves around, which means that the threat to my well-being is now coming in from a wider arc than before. So in order to attempt to narrow that arc and ensure that I can still keep the front of this ship pointed towards the maximum number of targets, I have to start going backwards. And I'm starting to, well, it's not exactly flanking fire, but it's definitely coming from further to the flanks than I'm comfortable with in the Dunkerque. So I have to keep going backwards, and I'm prioritising the threats to my flank. Generally speaking, if you're in a battleship, your target priority goes like this. shoot at other battleships when you have the chance to do a lot of damage to them. If you've got the side of the ship, for example, if you've got nothing else to shoot at and the battleship isn't giving you a particularly good angle, then fire high explosives at them. If a cruiser gives you the opportunity to delete him by showing you the nice big flat side, nail the cruiser. In the Dunkirk, it doesn't work like that. In the Dunkirk, your priority target, regardless of what else is going on, is any ship that's threatening to work its way around your flank. Like this Cleveland, who is suffering from a severe case of, oh my god, new ship, I must sink it, and completely ignoring the two cruisers that are pummeling him from very, very close range, judging by the trajectory of their shells, right in the side of the ship, and he is not going to last much longer, so that's great news. Thank you very much, cruisers. Of course, my guns have missed or over-penetrated on almost every shot I've fired at him, but, well, yeah, he's not going to be a problem for much longer. Which means I can now turn my attention, along with the two friendly cruisers on the left flank over there, to this New Mexico, who's on very, very low health. And, well, he's not really presenting me with the perfect angle. I'll take the shot and look at the dispersion of these shots. The New Mexico isn't presenting the best possible target angle towards me, and he's being hammered by cruisers and he's probably going to die very, very soon. That Fuso, on the other hand, I couldn't really ask for a better target, so I start aiming up at the Fuso, but then the New Mexico starts turning. Okay, I'd like to steal the kill here, so I'll fire one turret at the New Mexico and one at the Fuso. 2 shots hit the New Mexico, both of them failed. 4 shots fired at the Fuso, and 1 failed to penetrate, 1 missed completely, 1 over-penetrated, and 1 did penetrate and yet did 0 damage. New York over there. See what I can do at the New York, and I am actually moving forward for almost the first time in this match. New York's firing at me, I fire at the New York. 1 turret, over-penetrate. 2nd turret, Citadel. You get very, very mixed results with the Dunkirk's guns. Keeping the ship more or less pointed towards the New York, because he is still firing at me, I'm going to go for a kill steal here on the Königsberg with 1 of the turrets. As soon as it reloads, shots out, and then switch to the Molotov with the 2nd turret. And they're all firing at me, and yep, managed to secure the kill on the Königsberg. He had just over 1,000 health. Even an over-penetration would have sunk him, providing it's actually going to hit. Okay, I'm on fire, but it's only 1 fire. Not really a huge concern at the moment, and I'm going to be able to start recovering some health soon. The New York's still shooting at me, so nice broad flat side of the ship to shoot at. 1 turret, shots out. I'll wait and see where they land so I can adjust if I need to. 4 shots, 1 hit, 2,500 damage. 2nd turret, shots out. I'm taking fire from the Fuso now as well. Even less damage from penetrating hits. I'm not asking for citadels with every shot I fire, although that would be nice, but I wouldn't mind consistent amounts of damage from shots that I fire that do penetrate the armour. I'm going to split my fire again here. 1 turret fired at the Molotov, because he's really starting to piss me off with the fire damage. And 1 turret fired at the New York. Now, because of the ranges and the timing, all of these shells hit the target at pretty much the same time. 3,000 damage to the Molotov, 970 damage to the New York. That's probably an over-penetration on the New York, but they're all shooting at me now. I really need to finish this New York off. I've used my damage repair, and I'm pretty much back where I was thanks to the fire damage. 4 kilometer range, 4 shots into the New York, 2 of them hit. Best possible target outlined, and still 50% of your shots miss. Right. Oh, yeah, this is tricky. The Molotov's going to hit me regard. Oh, a Citadel on the Molotov. Okay, unexpected, but I'm very, very grateful for it. Now, Destroyer. I'm trying to keep the wreck of the New York between me and the Destroyer, so that the wreck of the New York will take the torpedoes rather than me, but I cannot show the side of my ship to that Fuso. So I'm slowing, again, to try to keep the wreck between me and the Destroyer. while still turning the ship towards the Fuso for obvious reasons. But it's no, I'm gonna have to start dodging torpedoes, and for that I need speed, so I speed up. The destroyer is the immediate threat now, so armor piercing, loaded or not, I'm gonna fire at him.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Oh, here are the torpedoes, and I took a big old hit there.
Dead ahead.
I've dodged those. Oh, 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 that one scratched the paintwork. Right. Well, he's going to get torpedoes away from the other side now, but managed to take him out. Start turning.
Torpedoes, direct.
There they are. That I didn't so much dodge those as they were badly aimed. But I'm taking a pounding from all directions now. The shots coming in from the flank, they're the Molotov again. Get some health back. Looked like a nice tight group into the bows of the Fuso there, but one penetration, two over penetrations, barely does 2,000 damage. The Molotov's still trying to set me on fire. I've got no good shot at the Fuso from this angle anymore, so I put a few in the direction of the Cleveland, but I don't give them nearly enough lead. And, well, that's a spot of good news. The team have taken the Fuso out for me. Right, Cleveland. And he... Oh, you don't want to be doing that, Mr. Cleveland. I mean, these guns aren't terribly accurate, but... Well, you know the old saying, throw enough shit at the wall and some of it's going to stick. He has set me on fire, of course. But it's only one fire, and he's just going to set me on fire again if I extinguish it. I'm going to wait until there are two fires. He's turning around the other way, and if he keeps heading away from me, angled, you can guarantee that even at this range, most of my shots are either going to miss or over-penetrate for next to no damage. So let's see how it goes. I mean, that looked pretty good. Yep, over-penetrations. Wait for the reload. I'm focusing my secondaries on him out of habit. Not that they're actually going to be able to do anything. Disastrous accuracy on that one, but some decent damage from the penetration. I have had to put the fire out because he managed to set another one. If he sets me on fire again, I'm dead. Simple as that, because I no longer have any damage repair. Got it. Right, that just leaves that real pain in the arse down there in the Molotov. He's out of range at the moment, and he only has 2,600 health, so it's likely that somebody else is going to get a kill. Likely, but not guaranteed. I mean, for a start, he keeps popping in and out of vision. And while there are other ships closer to him, like the Koenigsberg was on equally low health, and the Molotov has just sunk the Koenigsberg, so I am actually in with a fighting chance of getting down there and being able to shoot this guy. The only problem is he's going to see me from 16.2 kilometers away, long before I'm going to see him, and I only have 4,000 health left. So what I need is to be between 18 and 16 kilometers and have somebody else spot him for me. Like that little destroyer over there. Do you want to pop around the corner of that island and see if you can spot that Molotov for me? Oh wait, no, there he is. And he's in range. Oh, he's turning. He's turning. I don't think these are going to hit. Nope, nothing. To be expected. Somebody else is now lighting him up. Guns will be reloaded. He's in the turn again. Which way is he going to go? Is he going to hold that course? No, he's turning again. Destroyer's firing at him now. Shots out, some of them hit the island. Oh, I got him. I think I deserved the Molotov kill considering the amount of pain he caused me in that match. And there you go, victory with 500,000 credits, 8,700 experience, 110,000 damage, 4 kills, a couple of citadels, and count them, 1 secondary gun battery hit. Those things are completely useless. And when you see the damage received breakdown, unsurprisingly, the overwhelming majority was from high explosive and from fires set by the high explosive. Only 17,000 from armor piercing, but that's because this was a tier 6 battle, and I didn't have any 15-inch guns firing back at me. In a tier 7 or 8 match, I wouldn't have done nearly as well. So would I recommend the Dunkerque? Well, let's have a look at the plus column. The guns are pretty powerful, despite only being 330mm. And it is fast, top speed of 29.5 knots. Okay, now let's have a look at the negative column. bad armour, inaccurate guns, slow reload for the calibre of the guns, terrible anti-aircraft, completely pointless secondaries, terrible armour, bad torpedo protection, huge turning circle, visible from miles away. I think on balance I'm going to go with no. The ship just has too many flaws to balance out the good points. The thing about the Dunkirk is it's not a battleship, it's a battle cruiser. This is the battleship for cruiser players who don't like playing battleships. And that's probably the best thing I can say about it. I don't recommend the Dunkirk. I won't be buying it, put it that way. Your opinion may of course vary. This might be the ship of your dreams and exactly what you've been looking for since World of Warships was announced. If that's the case, by all means, it's your money, spend it wisely. Speaking of which, I do not know how much the Dunkirk is going to cost, and I do not know exactly when it's going to be released. However, the fact that I am now able to put a video of the Dunkirk up, and that Gamescom is coming very, very soon, I would guess, and this is just a guess, I certainly don't have any kind of inside information, but I would guess that we're likely to see this ship available in time for Gamescom. I still wouldn't recommend it though. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video, even if I suspect you're probably not going to enjoy the Dunkirk too much. And enjoy the rest of your weekend, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.